invested their time, their energy, and not looking for that recognition that's meaningful. And especially, I think, as you grow older, have your own children, you start to gain an appreciation for the thankless job that they did for you growing up. So, good examples. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's when you can identify those people that serve and that aren't looking for the recognition and just continue to put the hard work in every single day, you love working with those people. You love being around those people. There was a gentleman that always comes to mind from my congregation back home where I grew up in Ohio. His name's Dick Mason, and he's one of the elders. He's no longer an elder. He retired from that duty, but he always took an interest in me. He had a farm, and he'd hire me during the summer. I'd go, and he'd spend the time talking to me and investing time. He was also one of the one of the men in the group that we'd go rabbit hunting every Saturday with a group of folks, and just great guy, but always invested and never looking for that recognition. So those people play a major role in our lives as we grow. So how would your relationships or projects suffer without the contributions of each of these people? And what unique gifts, skills, or perspectives does each one contribute? Will the work be the same? What's that? Yeah? They do. They help keep things organized. They help keep things moving. They identify the areas that need to be handled and managed, and they do it. So they certainly help make sure the work can continue and propel forward. Any other thoughts? So I want to talk about two lurking dangers that are out there. Reluctance on the part of a leader to become virtually unknown, forgotten, and overlooked in the accomplishment of the objective. I think it is hard for leaders, especially if they like to have recognition, to be in a role where they don't get recognized. That's not how much of our world works these days. And the other is negligence of strong natural leaders who fail to recognize others who really deserve much of the credit. Has anybody ever worked on a project or submitted some work or done something and your boss or your leader took all the credit for it? That help motivate you? No? Sure. It never helps when a leader wants to take all the credit for everything that's being done and not acknowledge the hard work of the individuals who put time and effort and energy into whatever objective that was trying to be accomplished. In title, yeah. It's the second one here, the negligence piece, that I really want to emphasize as we go through this chapter. So if you desire fame, you desire recognition, you're going to fail as a leader. Your efforts will go unrewarded for all of eternity. If we look at Matthew 6:1, recalling what Jesus taught, says, "Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven." And even stronger words, in Matthew 20:25 through 28, he declared, "But Jesus called to them and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." I think most of us could probably name a leader who became almost obscure for the sake of getting a job done. And it sounds strange to our 21st century brains as we go through, but God's ready to bless some unique leaders who genuinely do not care who get the glory. And such leaders today are all too rare. But it is beautiful to stumble across a few outstanding people in life who don't have to be superstars, and they willingly remain unknown through authentic service. So we're going to read Nehemiah 7:1 through 4. We skipped over chapter 7 a few weeks ago. We're going to circle back. So, "Now when the wall had been built, and I had set up the doors, and the gatekeepers, the singers, and the Levites had been appointed, I gave my brother Hanani and Hananiah, the governor of the castle, charge over Jerusalem, for he was a more faithful and God-fearing man than many. And I said to them, let not the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot, and while they are still standing guard, let them shut and bar the doors, appoint guards from among the inhabitants of Jerusalem, some at their guard posts and some in front of their own homes. The city was wide and large, but the people within it were few, and no houses had been rebuilt." So at the beginning of chapter 7 here, the wall of Jerusalem has been completed. Part of Nehemiah's task in restoring the city walls was to help revive the city itself. To a Jew, Jerusalem was the place of great honor, their promised inheritance, and the dwelling place of their God. So once that was in place, Nehemiah's next task was to bring back God's people to live inside. Nehemiah chose people to fill specific roles of importance to make the city function, and he set up a schedule of how the city should run, and he established a security force on top of that. So we've got a city, we've got a wall, but the problem is it's empty. Nehemiah did have a plan to increase the population there. So we're going to move on to chapter 11, verses 1 through 2. "Now the leaders of the people lived in Jerusalem, and the rest of the people cast lots to bring 1 out of 10 to live in Jerusalem, the holy city, while 9 of the 10 remained in the other towns. And the people blessed all the men who willingly offered to live in Jerusalem." So casting lots was a lot like rolling dice, and it sounds arbitrary and random, but that was one of the ways that God led his people in making decisions throughout the Bible. As the Israelites went through this process, God selected 1/10 of the people to move into the city. So here it's, I think of it a little bit like the draft, kind of just how that goes is your number was called at random, you were selected, and you had to answer the call of duty. But what we see that's, I think, really special is that God worked in the hearts of those who hadn't been chosen, and they volunteered to move into Jerusalem. So this was the first group of the willing unknowns memorialized in the story. So we have the first method to increase the population with casting lots and bringing a tenth of the people. The second method came about by those people who made the willing and generous choice to move from their comfort outside the city to the inner parts. And as we read in chapter 7, no houses had been rebuilt. There was still a lot of work ahead of them to make that habitable. So had those people never volunteered, the city would hardly have prospered, nor could it have withstood the enemy attacks that came in later years. So think about the behind-the-scenes people you thought of earlier that we were discussing. What do you think is the motivation behind their sacrificial service? And what characteristics do you see that they have in common with the Israelite volunteers? Sure. I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but recognizing a job has to get done and they do it. There are a lot of people that fill that role that sometimes you can't think of them because they are the folks whose names don't get recognized, and it's hard to always see them, but they play such a vital role in what we do. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. No, I like your point of they're going to do it because they believe it makes a difference. It's important. It's not something that's not valued, not menial. But they understand how the pieces fit together and how the work has to move forward. So do you serve as a willing unknown in any area of your life? And where is that? And would you be content if you remained unacknowledged in that role the rest of your life? That's a tough one. Yeah. Yeah. We have a lot of little jobs around just this church that people do. and take care of for us that are really important, but if you stop and think about it, I couldn't tell you how every single one gets done or who does every task. I could tell you a pretty good idea of who's involved, but there's a lot of little things that I'm unaware of. I think even, we talked about parents, but that's an easy one. There's a lot of things you do as a parent that go unrecognized. Sometimes things you do as a spouse that, there's a lot of things we take for granted, like you keep a lot of things running that if you stop doing them, it would be really hard for me to just pick up and do it well. But there's things get missed for all the folks that do things that don't get recognized for it, don't get talked about. So if we read Colossians 3:23 through 24, which is, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. How does that passage address our attitude toward the tasks we've been given? And what should be our motivation? And what do you find most challenging about applying this passage? I've always liked this passage. That's one of the ones that's a kind of a centering, humbling thought for me when I'm doing stuff that I don't always want to do, and I don't always see the merit behind it, but you have to do it anyways. But I'm going to do my best no matter what it is. But that's hard.
This whole area that you're talking about, it's interesting from the standpoint, I'm a psychologist with illustration of imagination, but we all like to be stroked a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
No matter who it is, you might say you don't want to be stroked, or complimented, or whatever. Yet, on the other hand, biblical teaching through the years, Jesus, parables, homes. I mean, you've got this contrast
Mm-hmm.
constantly going on between our ears, I guess you might say.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is. It's a tough dilemma.
It is a tough dilemma. I think that there is certainly a reality to people liking to be recognized, liking to be thanked, liking to have a little bit of stroking just to encourage them to go along. We all need encouragement. But not looking for that encouragement, not looking for that recognition is our motivating factor. I know with kids, we talked about this early on in the lesson, a lot of times we'll set up a reward system for them to start shaping them to get a behavior. I can tell you, like potty training with Graham, we had cookies in the house, and every time he went to the bathroom, he'd get a cookie. And then he'd start just going to sit on the potty, but not doing anything. He's like, okay, cookie? It's like, we're not doing it just for the cookie. We're not doing it just for the M&Ms or whatever the, reward we offered there. But we shape that into, we like to do it because you're not sitting in wet pants all day, or, whatever it is. But if we never grow into the satisfaction of just doing the job because that's what needs to get done, and we're helping others, then that's hard. And a big piece of this lesson as we'll move forward is looking for those people who do those jobs. I think we've probably all seen folks, whether it's in the church, I know I've seen it there, I've seen it at work, I've seen it throughout life, where somebody just keeps doing something more and more and more, and they never get the recognition, or somebody steals their recognition, and we burn them out, and they get depressed, discouraged, and they stop, and that's something we have to avoid. Yeah.
It also
good points, and that, great, very applicable scripture, so, like it.
John's point, we've all heard stories, somebody passes on, and then it becomes discovered, all that great Sherman was,
Uh-huh,
that nobody ever knew they were doing, it just warm your heart, when you hear the story, because you knew their motivation wasn't there,
yeah,
please God. I think back to scripture, Colossians 3:20-24, from a coaching perspective, I never played sports growing up, but I had to coach soccer for 2 years. And I know how important it was for me to be there for my boys' games. And I think, when they were playing, if I was there, I'm sure it had some kind of impact. Not that they wouldn't work hard for the team, but and when I would have kids that would have grandparents come in and they're watching them, I could just kind of see their intensity
yeah,
and doing it for that praise. Feel, and this is in all things, so no matter whether you're helping with the dishes or coaching soccer, or playing soccer, or doing your job, it's all things. Those workers in Christ, and they're on the sidelines watching us.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So we're going to talk about 5 groups specifically who willingly gave something as we look at the Israelites here. So we've already talked about those who volunteered to move. So we're not going to spend a lot of time there. But if we move on and talk about the people who worked within the temple, and this is Nehemiah chapter 11, verses 10 through 12, if you want to flip over there. But it says, of the priests, and this, I already mentioned it, but there's a bunch of, and really hard to pronounce names, so I know I'm going to butcher them as we go through, but we're going to say them. So of the priests, Jediah the son of Joyrib, Jashin, Sariah the son of Hilkiah, the son of Meshullam, son of Zadok, son of Marioth, son of Ahitub, ruler of the house of God, and their brothers who did the work of the house. 822. And Adin, the son of Jeroham, son of Pelaliah, son of Amzi, son of Zechariah, son of Pashur, son of Malchijah. So, butchered all those names appropriately. You're going to get some more butchering of names, but talk about a sizable ministry staff of 822 people. And so many of them remain unnamed. These people worked and served anonymously so that God's people could be blessed as they came to worship. We have those who worked outside the place of worship. This is verses 15 and 16. And of the Levites, Shemaiah the son of Hashub, son of Azrikam, son of Hashabiah, son of Bunni, son of Shabbathai, and Jozabad, the chiefs of Levites who were over the outside work of the houses of God. So these are the people who were in charge of the outside work. And they had 2 types of tasks. So maintaining the exterior of the temple and its grounds, and serving people in areas such as judging and counseling. Also important work. Then we have those who supported the ministry through prayer. So in verse 17, and Mattaniah, the son of Micah, the son of Zabdi, son of Asaph, who was the leader of praise, who gave thanks, and Bakbukiah, the second among his brothers, and Abda, the son of Shemua, son of Galal, son of Jeduthun. The prayer warriors' fervent words often go unnoticed, especially by men, but not by God. I know that there's a lot of people today that spend a lot of time in prayer for those around them, for this congregation, for our leaders, for all variety of things. And we don't know. But God does. And then those who serve the Lord with singing. So in verses 22 through 23, the overseer of the Levites in Jerusalem was Uzi, the son of Benai, the son of Hashabiah, the son of Mattaniah, the son of Micah, and the sons of Asaph, the singers over the work of the house of God. For there was a command from the king concerning them, and a fixed provision for the singers, as every day required. So these individuals willingly developed their gifts and gave of their service. And these are just groups of people specifically mentioned in the chapter we're looking at, but again, many of them are not recognized by name, the large groups of people who carried out those works. So consider some of the unsung accomplishments and daily tasks that you may not usually notice as you focus on more high-profile projects. Can you give the names of volunteers, support staff, maintenance crew members, prayer supporters, or other behind-the-scenes servants? Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure. Yeah. 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 It's a great example of Paul making sure to recognize those unsung heroes and help bolster them and encourage them to continue on in their good work.
To Becky's point, this is a story I heard, I believe it to be true, a college professor, not sure of the subject, but it came down to the end of the semester, the final exam for that semester. All the students sat down, he passed out a paper with one question on it, and it was, what is the name of the janitor in this building? And reportedly, some people quickly jotted down, put a big smile on their face and left, and other people just sat there and thought. I hope that gives you a story.
Yeah.
It speaks to what you talked about, to recognize those people.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It's important to recognize those people, and I can tell you, like, if it was up to me, people, you're much better about recognizing others and being thoughtful. But typically around Christmas, you'll send little thank you notes with the kids to give for a little tiny gift, and Graham was handing them out and gave them to the lunch aides who are in there. And they're another group that don't get recognized by anything, but I think you were in the school, and one of them was like, thank you so much. Nobody's ever given me this. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Some of the most Christian people that I've been in contact with, they typically would think we would have recognition functions with volunteers. And they would come, we have a nice meal for them and recognize them. What was interesting was so
there's a lot of people that work behind the scenes that really keep everything going. I'm going to skip those next two questions. We're just running a little short on time. So, practical principles for today. So your gift makes you valuable, although not necessarily famous. Being a leader can be a lonely, often thankless job. Sometimes there's little room for failure or mistakes. And others may not notice or understand the extra time and energy you devote to your role. But God sees. He knows your heart. The same is true of those who are gifted in an area that never reaches the spotlight. They're as valuable as some of those folks that I named, and just as well known to God. And every labor done in love is remembered by God. So take note of Hebrews 6:10. For God is not unjust, so as to overlook your work and the love that you have shown for his name in serving the saints, as you still do. This applies to our most public duties, as well as our private actions. Even if nobody notices your faithfulness, God does. Continue to be faithful. And our final rewards will be determined on the basis of our faithfulness, not public applause. See, I made a typo. So the public may never know of your ministry, but God will reward you in heaven based on your pure-hearted service of your life, rather than according to the number of plaques, trophies, or thank you notes you've received. Paul wrote in Ephesians 2, verses 8 and 9, For by grace you've been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. Whether you go to heaven or not has nothing to do with your accomplishments and your recognition that you receive here on earth. Applying these principles requires a genuine attitude of humility. As servants, ministers, employees, it takes a humble heart and willing hands to be faithful day in and day out without any expectation of recognition, applause, or reward. On the other hand, leaders and employers should also not underestimate the confidence and encouragement that results when those who work under their leadership are recognized for their faithfulness. So, if you're not involved in serving as a willing unknown, think of a specific task that needs volunteers, either here, at church, in the community, or in your workplace. How can you set aside your pride or personal preferences and commit to using your time, energy, or skills to help meet that need? I think there's several unknown but valuable names probably within your sphere of influence that are out there to be able to be recognized. This lesson, as we've gone through and you've been thinking, may have already surfaced some in your brain that you've overlooked in the past. That person who cleans your workspace, the maintenance man who controls the temperature, that's always an important one. Those who care to teach your children, the people running the sound booth to ensure that service runs smoothly and can be streamed to allow people remotely to worship with us. Realizing it's really easy for willing unknowns to get discouraged from time to time. Why not drop a small note in the mail or speak a thank you to them in person when you see them? Willing unknowns are everywhere. In fact, one could make the argument that without the many hands that make things happen, leaders would be nothing but talking heads, spouting empty words. Scripture is filled with examples of unnamed faithful servants who often spend their whole lives without recognition or reward. In light of the example of these unsung heroes, be content with your own quiet work, but also complimentary of the quiet work of others. I think it's really important we take the time and think about that. We often get distracted or engrossed in our own work and fail to see those around us doing all the things that are so important. So that's really my message for today. Any other closing thoughts? All right. Well, we'll be dismissed. We'll get rolling. Thank you. You're welcome.